real-time flood forecasting system for Mioe Basin. This research is aiming at developing a modeling framework for Mioe Basin in Sri Lanka, real-time flood forecasting, and implementation of the modeling is under progress. Myself, Priyankara, and co-author Janaki Megastan are from Irrigation Department of Sri Lanka, and we work together with a senior lecturer from Faculty of Engineering, University of Peradeniya, the Hamdayas, for developing this conceptual model. We should acknowledge the Climate Resilience Integrated Water Management Project under United Nations Development Programme for undertaking this task, and the Irrigation Department for the support given. Let's move on to the introduction. Floods are the most hazardous disaster in Sri Lanka, leading to economic losses, casualties, and deaths. Seasonal floods are a major threat to the development of the country, and the impact on the daily life of the settlers also cannot be ignored. Even though the critically dangerous floods propagate slowly with alarming people to evacuate, Sri Lanka has previously experiences on airlifting the stranded people due to flood by spending millions of rupees. Mioe is one of the highly vulnerable floodplains in Sri Lanka, and there were recent previous flooding in 2015, 16, and 19. In some occasions, people were trapped in inundated areas and they had to be airlifted. Mioe Basin is located in the northwestern province of Sri Lanka, covering a catchment area of 1,500 square kilometers, and the basin is located mainly in the dry zone. The flooding in Mioe Basin is triggered by monsoons, mainly the northeast and southwest monsoons, and the heavy rainfall in the upper and mid catchments result in flooding in the downstream area. Many tributaries experience frequent flash floods, but the situation gets worse in the lower basin, especially at the town area of Puttalam. And it is observed that the command area of Tabbova and Inginimiti reservoirs and Mioe Junction are the most critical flood-affected areas in the basin. If we move on to the overview of this study, we can see Tabbova and Inginimiti are the largest reservoirs in the basin, and spilling of Tabbova and Inginimiti during adverse weather conditions worsen the flood impact. Despite the functionality of reservoirs in flood retention, unavailability of flood forecast data and inaccessibility to real-time data limit the decision-making on reservoir operations for better flood management. Therefore, a comprehensive flood study is essential for flood management, and real-time flood forecast model incorporated with reservoir operations for the entire basin can minimize the flood impacts, and we will be able to fill the reservoirs at their optimum capacity. For the purpose of model development, calibration, and validation, we have identified the necessity of an automated gauging station network, which is partially being installed in the basin, and new stations are being established to feed the rainfall and flow data to the modeling network. So these gauging stations will send the data to the server in 10 minutes interval, and currently we can access to this data through a website that is being developed with Irrigation Department, varisoba.lk. When we move on to the conceptual model framework, we are planning to amalgamate a suite of models to predict flood using automated gauging stations. The suite of models are consisting with HEC HMS for hydrological modeling the subcatchments, and HEC RAS for one-dimensional and two-dimensional hydraulics modeling and inundation mapping as well, and HEC RESIM for reservoir simulation, and HEC RTS for coupling all the models through one interface and simulating them real time. So the data collected from automated gauging stations such as water level and rainfall will be sent to the server, and from the server the rainfall and flow data will be sent to HMS, RESIM and HECRAS models, and from HMS the catchment outflows will be sent to the reservoir simulation model, and in reservoir simulation model there will be a facility for the decision maker, maybe an engineer or relevant professional. They can make decisions on gate operations at the respective reservoirs, and the model will provide a comprehensive guidance during a flood event with real-time and predicted inflows to the reservoir, which will provide a strong base for effective decision making. So somehow from the HECRAS model, we can get the water depths and water levels and flow velocities and flood reach times. And considering these results, the flood warnings will be issued through a graphical user interface. So these HEC softwares are used because of the proven applicability for real-time flood forecast models, and all these models are softwares. No maintenance cost is involved. The data captured by the gauging stations will automatically be fed through a filtering process into the suite of softwares, and once the models are run sequentially, the results will be updated, and it is presumed that the process will take around 4 hours for one cycle, and therefore the applicability of machine learning and artificial intelligence techniques will be considered for shortening the simulation time, and the flood warnings will be disseminated among the institutes which are related to the public safety, and it can be accessed to the general public as well. In the flood warning system, graphical user interface for real-time flood forecasting model and map library, output graphical displays and sound alerts for providing access to forecasted inundation maps with inundation extent and inundation depth, and results for water level, discharge, inundation extent, population or the area affected up to the village level due to flooding will be considered, and the development of an interface for real-time display of results of the flood warning system linking with the irrigation department website will be considered. And there will be 3 permission levels as admin, moderator and public. The admin will have the permissions to modify the model parameters and run the model and generate warnings, and the moderator will be able to view the parameters such as the gate openings and the other relevant hydrological parameters, and the public will be able to access to the results and flood warnings. So the final output will consist with flood extent and flood depth and lead times and the flood reach times. These kind of parameters will be available in the flood warning system. This model will serve as a reservoir operation model as well, and the main objective is to mitigate flood by utilizing the flood retention capability of reservoirs while filling the reservoirs to the optimum level. So this will not be merely a flood model, but a combination of flood model and reservoir operation model. So this will not only predict flood, but minimize it to the maximum feasible level, and if that fails only, then the flood will be predicted. So guidance will be given for reservoir operations to minimize flooding, and flood warnings will be generated at critical locations. So at this initial stage, we assume that we will be able to give a flood warning with real-time gauging stations for 24-hour lead time at Karuwalagassawa and 6-hour lead time in the upstream of the Kalgamu area. And if we can go with the rainfall prediction, say for example, if the rainfall prediction is for 3-day forecast, then we will be able to give a 50-hour lead time at Galgamua and 72-hour lead time at Karuwalagassawa. We have presented our conceptual model, And this model is under developing and it will be functioning very soon. We would like to welcome all your comments and thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Priyankara. And actually, there is a question already waiting at the chat box.
Yes.
You can take a look there as well. It's from Isaac. Essentially, you are saying the reservoirs will be used as attenuation reservoirs to reduce flooding downstream. Openating reservoir gates would control the release of water. So please feel free to address this question.
Yeah, definitely that is the main objective of this study and this model. Because due to non-availability of real-time data, during a flooding period, we have some problems like we need to fill the reservoirs to the maximum level. But when we don't have real-time inflow data, we are facing difficulties that do we need to open the gates or, can we fill it more than the FSL level? Like that. So by waiting without having real-time data, we will wait until the reservoirs are filled. And in that case, if the peak flood come in that time, we have no option other than opening the spilling gates. So what will happen is downstream area will be affected by those, those gate openings. So that is the problem. If we have real-time inflow data and a flood model, which can incorporate with reservoir operation, we can fill to the reservoirs and we can use them as in the question says, the attenuation reservoirs. Definitely that is our main objective.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on this presentation from our audience?
We have our reservoirs.
Follow-up comment. We have our reservoirs kept at 85% used for attenuation and consider the water company's statutory duties to provide water. Do you have a comment on that, Mr. Piankara?
I will give a brief comment on that. The thing is, the main concern in Miyoi Basin is not flood, but drought. So therefore, the main, during a rainy period, we try to fill them to the maximum level, maximum possible level. So, otherwise we will not be able to utilize the water in the dry period. So we don't have that kind of 85% capacity limitation. We try to fill it to the maximum level, but the problem arises if in that period the flood peak comes, then we have to open the gates and the flooding will be a major issue. So if we have real-time data and a comprehensive model, so we can fill them to the maximum level because we have the inflow data. So we know the amount of water that will come in, say, in 6 hours or in 12 hours, in 24 hours. We know the amount of water that we can collect. So we have a lead time to release the water and fill to the reservoirs without affecting the downstream area. I think I have addressed it.
Thank you. Any other questions? In case you think of anything else, we can come back to this at the end, if we have time at the end of the session. So we'll move on to our next presentation. Our next presentation is on rainfall triggered landslide early warning system based on the soil water index. This will be presented by Ms. Chaturi from the National Building Research Organization of Sri Lanka.
Hi everyone. Today I'm going to present my research on the topic rainfall triggered landslide early warning system based on soil water index. Today the presenting is myself, HEC Prigamage, and this is my research flow. Sri Lanka is situated nearby the equator and therefore very often being subjected to atmospheric disturbances. Sri Lanka receives rainfall throughout the year. Due to heavy rainfall occurrences, landslides and slope failures take place, causing huge damages to people and property. Quantifying the probability of landslide risk associated with heavy rainfall is necessary for a mountainous country like Sri Lanka to mitigate the damages for people and property due to landslide occurrences. Rainfall thresholds for slope failures are essential information for establishing early warning systems and for the disaster risk reduction. National Building Research Organization is a focal point for predicting the landslides. National Building Research Organization uses cumulative rainfall values for predicting landslides. The current early warning system produces three warning levels. Watch stands for 75 millimeters and above, alert stands for 100 millimeters and above, and evacuation stands for 150 millimeters above. 150 millimeters and above based on 24-hour cumulative rainfall. At present, mostly the short-term rainfall, namely hourly rainfall intensity, and long-term rainfall intensity, namely up to 10-day cumulative rainfall, are considered for landslide prediction in addition to the 24-hour cumulative rainfall. Later researchers carried in finding the best long-term and short-term rainfall indices. As a result, in 1.5 hours after half-period working rainfall and soil water index were declared as the best short-term rainfall index and long-term rainfall index respectively. For enhancing the existing landslide early warning system, the consent was given on the soil-water balance triggered by the rainfall, in which represented by the soil water index. This study implemented as a part of JICA Sri Lanka project for capacity in strengthening development of non-structural measures for landslide risk reduction in Sri Lanka. This is my problem. The accuracy of the issued landslide early warnings might not be achieved 100% accuracy without the idea of soil water accumulation at this saturation level. To gain the higher accuracy, there must be a way of obtaining soil water retention amount and the boil saturation level of the soil. The soil profile is varying in regional wise. In each profile has different characteristics on permeability, infiltration, and runoff. Therefore, critical values for values of soil water saturation are needed in regional wise. My objective is to derive critical soil water index values as threshold values for issuing landslide early warnings. This is a theoretical phenomena, and soil water index is going with the tank model. Rainwater penetrates through the ground surface and discharges into the rivers, flows into the deeper ground. As the amount of water stored in the soil increases, the risk of the land slope collapse increases. A tank model, which commonly used to estimate the relationship of rainfall and runoff, is used for the soil water index calculation. Tank model is a conceptual model, and it simulates the moving behavior of water in the soil layers, including runoff, infiltration, and percolation. Tank model used in the study consists of three tanks, and these three tanks lay downward along the vertical soil profile, namely surface runoff, intermediate, and groundwater outflow. At different levels, the soil depths, different soil textures have various values of rates of discharges and infiltrations. In the tank model, each tank has a side outlet representing outflow to the surrounding soil and bottom outlet representing the outflow to the deeper ground. Output from the side outlet of the first tank corresponds to the surface runoff. That of the second tank corresponds to the intermediate flow, and the third tank corresponds to the base flow. Input to the first tank corresponds to the rainfall, and input to the second tank and third tank are output from the bottom outlet of the upper tank. Upper tanks are stored in the soil of certain areas. That helps to clarify the risk of landslide-related incidents caused by heavy rain. I have used three parameters, and these have been tested for Japanese soil conditions, and also we are testing here the three types of three parameter sets, whether they are suits to our Sri Lankan or soil conditions or not. And these P1, P2, P3 are giving moderate peak, gentle peak, and sharp peak respectively, and they are namely granite, paleosonic, and tertiary and quaternary respectively. And this is my study area. In Sri Lanka, 14 districts are identified as landslide prone districts: Badulla, Ratnapura, Kandy, Nuwara, Kegol, Kurunegala, Matale, Ratnapura, Kalambu, and Kampaha, and Kalutara. These sub-basins, I have selected I have selected sub-basins which considered as a study area, study areas, and they were created using ArcGIS software, and they have created for the selected discharge gauging stations. From the study area, it covers almost all the districts except the Matale, Kurunegala, Kalambu, Gampa, and Hambantota. Few subbasins spread over two or more districts, and some of the basins consist of subcatchments, because some of basins consist of three or more two or more gauging stations, so they are representing subcatchments. So here you can see the 14 districts that are prone to landslides, and these are the covering areas, and these are my study area, and here you can see some have one gauge stations and some have two or more gauge stations for the basins and the sub-basins of river, sub-basins of river basins, and they have some, due to having the two or more gauging stations within the inside the sub-basin, so they have split into the subcatchments. This is the materials and methodology, and I have used the secondary data for this analysis. In task-wise, I have divided this collected data into several two categories, and for the first task is my first task is to the calibration and validation of the model parameters that I have selected, and second task is soil water calculation, applying the selected parameters and applying them to derive critical lines and critical soil water index values. For the parameter calibration and validation process, I have used past 30 mean rainfall records and records for derived sub-basins and subcatchments from years 2016 to 2019. Observed hourly discharge data from year 2016 to 2019, and other related data, geology, elevation, and land use maps, tank model parameter data. And for soil water calculation, soil water index calculation, I have used past 30 minutes rainfall data records for derived sub-basins and subcatchments from year 2014 to 2020, past landslide records, and records from 2014 to 2020. And this is the process of analysis. You can go through this one. And I have used, for this analysis, I have used hydrographs, statistical tools, root mean square error, and NSE, Nash Scutliffe model efficiency coefficient, and the other, I have the discussed three parameter sets. These are the results and under the results and discussion for the parameter calibration and validation process. I have selected from the calibration and validation. I have selected the best suitable parameter set for each sub-basin. So by looking at the calibration and validation values taken from the statistical values, NSCE values, I have selected the best suitable parameter set for each selected basin, selected sub basin. So this is how this is how the calibration was going through the hydrographs with the statistical analysis, and this graph represent the observed discharge and the calculated discharge using the macro model, using a macro model created for this study. And by using these macros, I have drawn the hydrographs and I have compared them, compared the observed one and the calculated discharge values, and I have identified the gaps, and I have changed the parameter sets, and I have calibrated that one, and I have selected the best parameter set, and I have validated it further for whether they are incorrect or not. Then the next one is critical deriving the critical lines and critical soil water index values. For this one, I have used normal distribution curves, and these curves represents the probability lines, and here you can see a mesh of lines. These mesh of lines represent the rainfall events, and some are accumulated for a certain area and the others are spreaded. Normally landslide events are rare occurrences, and it's occur due to a heavy rainfall, and you can see the landslide events that represented by red dots are away from the the low rainfall values. So they are rare cases, and they are due to being they are rare cases, they have less probability values. So I have selected so I have drawn the critical lines for I have drawn the critical lines which are separated from low rainfall values and high rainfall values. So I have drawn, I have taken the intersecting value, the intersecting value of X as the critical soil water index value of the critical line. Then for Dharaniyagala sub-basins, the p-value is 0.02 and critical soil water index value is 154. For Caledonia, the p-value is 0.005 and critical soil water index value is 132. Likewise, I have derived the critical lines and critical soil water index values, and this is the result, final result I have come through, and these are the probabilities, and these are the critical soil water index values. For Caledonia it is 132, Norwood it is 117, and Colombo 134, Daranegala 154, Navalipidi 117, Nakala 114, and Nalvaya 101, the Tavalama 128, Urava 127. And these are the conclusions I have come across. Mainly here, the range of regional soil water thresholds. The minimum regional threshold value for soil water index for the occurrence of landslide is 100, and the range is 100 to 116. If there is a rainfall value more than 100, means there is a risk for being occurrence being probability, there is a probability to occur a landslide. So then I have achieved my target, and these are the references, and thank you for listening for my video. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have Ms. Chaturi here to answer questions. And again, we already have 2 questions in the chat box. So first we have from Isaac again. Your discussion is based on 9 basins instead of all the 15 basins you had indicated earlier on the map. Is there a reason for this? So why deselect some basins? Is it based on the SWI? Ms. Chaturi?
Here I have selected 9 basins based on the availability of the data. I have taken data from Department of Irrigation, and for the period I have selected, I was able to select that 9 basins only. I mean, depend on the availability of data, I have selected the 9 basins.
Okay, thank you. There is one question sent privately. Is there any connection with the soil water index and antecedent daily rainfall index? This is from Mr. Sarath Pimalan.
Hello, I didn't get that.
Is there any connection with SWI and antecedent daily rainfall index?
Yeah. We can from daily rainfall data also we can limit sorry, can I answer that question later? I mean,
sure, we can come back to that at the end of the session.
Yes.
Hopefully we won't run out of time. Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Chaturi? Just wondering, I don't know if I missed it in your presentation, but how much potential lead time are we looking at if you're going to utilize this method for early warning?
I didn't get that, sorry.
How much potential lead time?
Yeah, potential time is, I think, within 10 minutes we can get that. If the past data records is available, we can get the using a macro program, we can get this data within 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to our third presentation of the session. And this is on the development of flood warning mobile applications, and it will be presented by Mr. Janaka from the Education Department of Sri Lanka.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, you are warmly welcome to our presentation on development of a flood warning mobile application. My name is Engineer Janaka Priyantha Vikramasuriya. Currently, I am working as an irrigation engineer in Irrigation Department of Sri Lanka. There are 4 more colleagues who works with me on this study. They are Engineer Sumit Priyankara, who is also an irrigation engineer at Irrigation Department of Sri Lanka. Further, Shehana Iqbal, Amanda Ariyaratne, Madhavi Gayatri, who are undergraduates of Faculty of Engineering, University of Moratuwa, supported by the technical side of the mobile application preparation. This paper discusses the development of a mobile application, initially for Android, which is the most widely used mobile operating system in Sri Lanka, to disseminate the flood warning to the users. Basically, this mobile application has two platforms. One is with the real-time reservoir and dam details, which are highly important for the dry zone. And the other platform is with the flood warning system. First, let me give you an overview of our presentation. I will give you an introduction first. Then let me brief you about the types of floods, followed by the objectives of our study. Then let me explain you our methodology and the options available in the mobile application. Finally, I will explain you about the future developments that can be applied for this mobile application, because this study is still going on by 5 of us. Sri Lanka is an agricultural country having major and medium scale reservoirs scattered all over the island. Most of the reservoirs are located in dry zone to cater the water requirement in dry periods, mainly for the cultivation and drinking purpose. It is very much important for the public to get to know the reservoir status and other relevant details regarding the reservoirs and dams in order to arrange their arrangements in agricultural field. Currently, the Irrigation Department publishes the details regarding the reservoirs in the website and the public can access. Even though it is very important data portal, the requirement of a user-friendly platform for the public has been raised in this technological developed era. Sri Lanka is severely affected by seasonal flooding, and climate change adversely increases the frequency and magnitude of floods, leading to a huge loss of life and property. Having public access to responsible early warnings will be beneficial in flood risk mitigation. Despite the application of latest flood modeling software tools in Sri Lankan flood-prone areas, reaching the last mile to deliver the flood warnings to the community is still improvable. Recent rapid development of Internet of Things has upgraded the information and communication technology field significantly to deliver real-time information to the crowd. Based on this development of the technology, a mobile application can be developed as a platform to communicate with the public. A fluvial or river flood occurs when the water level in a river, lake, or stream rises and overflows onto the surrounding banks, shores, and neighboring land. The water level rise could be due to the excessive rain or snow melt. The damage from a river flood can be widespread as the overflow affects smaller rivers downstream, which can cause dams and dikes to break and swamp nearby areas. Most common river floods in Sri Lanka occurs in Kalni River Basin, Kalu River Basin, and Attanakalu River Basin. Regarding Kalni River Basin, it is classified to different categories according to the Nagalagama Street River gauge. When considered the past history of 200 years, the table covers that period of floods history. Over that period, over the total 26 flood events, only 3 classified as critical. 16 are classified as dangerous floods. The remainder are major and minor. A pluvial flood occurs when an extreme rainfall event creates a flood independent of an overflowing water body. A common misconception about flood is that you must be located near a body of water to be at risk. Yet pluvial flooding can happen in any location, urban or rural, even in areas with no water bodies in the vicinity.
Department of Meteorology says that showers can be expected in the country due to the low pressure area developing in the vicinity of Sri Lanka. Acting Director General of the department, Atula Karunanayake, said strong winds can also be expected in the northern part of the country. 4 sluice gates of the Victoria Reservoir were automatically opened today due to the inclement weather in the Central Hills. People living in low-lying areas, including Kotmale, are requested to be vigilant. 6 sluice gates of the Natchiyaduva Reservoir in Anuradhapura were also opened. Ten sluice gates of the Parakram Samudra were also opened today. Entry routes to the Anuradhapura sacred city were obstructed due to the showers.
This paper discusses the development of a mobile application, initially for Android, which is the most widely used mobile operating system of Sri Lanka, to disseminate the flood warnings to the users. This mobile application is important to allow sufficient time for evacuation, identify flooded roads with predicted flood levels, and manage disaster risk from the location of the user himself. Rainfall and other meteorological data were collected into the input to the hydrological model. Initially, HECRAS 2D flood inundation model was used as a rainfall runoff model. The output of the model was saved in the server and the mobile application gets access to the server. Whenever a user searches for a flood level prediction of a certain location through the mobile application, the relevant results will be fetched from the database via an application programming interface API and then displayed in the user's application interface. This developed mobile application gives the user warning messages of the predicted water levels in near future hours and nearby safe places or locations that the user can leave in case of a danger in a flood. The user can refer to the predicted water levels at any location, rainfall data in the near past, and real-time water levels in river gauging stations. Any other required parameters can be coupled with this mobile application. Let me explain you our methodology to give you a clearer idea of our study. First, the upstream flow data and the rainfall are collected and fed to the model. It can be done either manually or automatically controlled system. Then the flood inundation model is run in selected time intervals and the results are fed into the server computer. Finally, the real-time predicted levels for the flood is directly sent to the user using the mobile application. Before the verification of the results, Before that, the verification of the results is a very important thing that has to be done by a responsible person. Our mobile application has basically three options. One, flood prediction in your area or your specific location. This is the most important and interesting option here in this application. Two, rainfall in past 24 hours can be accessed here. Three, real-time water levels in rivers can be viewed. Regarding the first option, the user can select location by GPS or the user can select location manually on the map, or otherwise the user can insert the coordinates of the location. Then the mobile application searches in the server and gives the result as you are safe or unsafe. Here in this example, the location is safe and the mobile application says that you are safe and you will not get a considerable flood, but be on alert. If the user selects to show the safe places, the mobile application will guide the user to the nearest safe place and it will guide you for getting a phone call to any help. This number can be connected with the main stakeholders during a flood. Further, the user can see the real-time river gauge readings using the mobile application. The only requirement to use this mobile application is an Android mobile phone with GPS and internet facility. The location can be fetched to the mobile application using GPS facility in the mobile phone, or the user can input the location manually. Therefore, using this mobile application, the users who are not affected by the flood can guide their friends or relations who are affected by the flood. This method of flood warning will reduce the inconvenience for forwarding messages to the public in case of a failure in telephone cable connection or any other electricity power failure. The accuracy of this platform of the mobile application mainly depends on the hydrological model that is used and the accuracy of the GPS system of the mobile phone. After further improvements, this mobile application would be a convenient, user-friendly and real-time flood warning application that the public can access easily. This can be further developed for real-time monitoring system for the settlements and other failures after instrumentations in the bund or dam. However, the most important fact is to verify the details before publishing to the public. We would like to forward our immense thanks to all who helped us, and thank you all for listening. We would like to name this mobile application as Joint Automated Message Processing System, which gives the initial letters of 5 of us: Janaka, Amanda, Madhavi, Priyankar, and Shahana. Further, we are very happy to get your comments and any questions from you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Dear
you,
ladies
Engineer
and gentlemen,
Janaka.
you are
That's
warmly
very
welcome
clever.
to our
The name,
presentation
the
on
acronym.
development of a flood
So
warning
are
mobile
there
application.
any questions for Engineer Janaka? Okay, so there's one in the chat. If you can see it now. How do you make sure of the access of data from the mobile application during the flood? Because with heavy rainfall, many operator networks fail, and in the rural areas, remote areas, they do not have backup power. It's the same in Manila as well. Yes, please go ahead, Engineer Janaka.
Yeah, how do you make sure the access of data from mobile application during a flood? Actually, this is not the result of the mobile application. This is run in the server in a computer. Then the data is transferred through the mobile application to the public or the user. That is why I mentioned that the verification of this data or the results is very important, and it is the main point here. Before publishing in the mobile application or before sending them to the media, the mobile application, it should be verified clearly before sending them. With heavy rainfall, all many operator networks fail. No, this mobile application needs only the GPS, and if you have and the internet facility. By experience in Sri Lanka, I noticed that during the flood, most of the people use Facebook and using their mobile phones, and they put their own photographs. And sometimes putting a photograph in a Facebook has helped them to evacuate from the flood, because their friends can get to know that they are in a trouble, then they can go to help. Therefore, with heavy rainfall, all many operator networks fail. I think most of the mobile operator networks works in Sri Lanka, but in remote.
That's good. That's interesting. Because we have the same problem here in Manila with the heavy rainfall, the internet connections degrade, or during the last typhoon we lost power, and in many communities it was for a few days. So in that case, there really was no access to the internet at all. So it's great to hear that this is not as much of a problem for you in Sri Lanka.
But yeah, this was still in the progress of study and still in the development stage for the Kalani River Basin, that is in the western area. Yes, it is, Arus, it is true. Because we have not tried it in these remote areas. Sometimes they may work, and sometimes GPS will not be a problem, but using them in the using the internet will be, sometimes it will be a problem, but we have not tried it for the remote areas. Thank you, Arus, for the comment, and we can try it in the remote area.
We have one more question for you. Do you have any plans of integrating numerical weather prediction model data in the future, so that you can integrate rainfall forecasts into the model?
Rainfall forecasting. Yeah, we can incorporate that also, because this mobile application will be a simple base or some interface to the public, so that because mobile application, everyone nowadays, everyone has a mobile phone in their arms. Therefore, it can be used as a good platform to go to the community. That was our idea. And yes,
Hello.
informed. I think Priyanka, do you have any idea?
Yeah,
to take?
Actually, I would like to make a clarification on that also. This is regarding the dissemination of the results of a flood model.
Yes.
So this last mile. So I mean, the numerical weather prediction comes before the process of the flood model. So we use that numerical weather prediction to the flood model. And in our mobile application, what we are trying to do is disseminate the flood warning. So numerical weather prediction will be definitely used in the process of flood model. And in this mobile application, what we do is we take the data from the server and disseminate it among the public.
I think Isaac has asked a question, could you consider historical rainfalls and model with forecast? Yes, actually, Priyanka, we have used the 2016 flood. We have used the 2006 the flood data in 2016, and we have developed the model, and we have run the model, and we have included those results up to now. And in future, we are going to develop this for the future floods also. That should be, I mean, incorporated with the other institutions also.
Okay, so thank you for those questions and suggestions. Looking forward to seeing what happens with your application. Maybe by this time next year, for the next conference, you will be presenting the tested application already.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll move on. Oh, and before we move on, just a note here from Ms. Chaturi regarding the question a while ago on the antecedent rainfall. So it's in the chat box for those who are wondering about that. Okay, our next presentation is on identifying extreme rainfall events for the period 1991 to 2017 in Sri Lanka using percentile-based analysis and its projections for 2100 for the emission scenarios RCP 4.5 and 8.5. Presenting this is Ms. Uthpala from the Department of Meteorology.
Good evening, everyone. I am H.S. Utpala Hapuarachi from Department of Meteorology, and the co-author of this study is Mr. Sarath Premalal from Association of Disaster Risk Management Professionals. And our research topic is identification of extreme rainfall event for the period from 1970 to 2019 in Sri Lanka using percentile-based analysis and its projections for 2100 for the emission scenarios of RCP 4.5 and 8.5. I would like to clarify the analysis under these topics: introduction, objectives, data and methodology, result and discussion, conclusion and acknowledgement, and final references. First, I will start with introduction. The hydrological hazards associated with extreme weather events have increased globally over the past few decades, leading to floods, landslides, drought, and heat waves. Major reason for such hazard is an increase in the amplitude and frequency of weather extremes. Sri Lanka too has a wealth of experiences in extreme weather events and hazards over the past few years. We conducted the study with the primary objective of identification of trends in extreme climate events and projecting them into the future will be important to find adaptation strategies in order to mitigate the disasters associated with extreme weather. The objective of the present study are to identify the impact of climate change on precipitation extremes in the decadal periods since 1970 to 2019 at 16 stations in 3 climatic zones, and further to find the future trends of extreme use in next NASA data in decadal periods until 2100 for 4 climatic seasons in 3 climatic zones. We used daily precipitation data at 16 synoptic stations out of 22 major rainfall stations for the 15-year period since 1970 to 2019, representing 3 climatic zones. We did not consider the 6 major rainfall locations due to higher number of missing values. Analysis was focused to find the number of rainy days above 90th percentile, it means heavy rainfall, and 95th percentile, it means very heavy rainfall for the 5 decades. 90th and 95th percentile value were calculated using daily observation data for each station for the period from 1961 to 1990 as the base period for climatological analysis. This figure shows the 16 rainfall stations as used in this study and the main 3 climatic zones in Sri Lanka. For future projections, extreme rainfall events have been calculated using NextNASA daily downscale projections dataset. The study was performed over 3 climatic zones in Sri Lanka for the historical period from 1975 to 2005. Future climate change was assessed over the future decadal time slices from 2020 to 2100. These 6 models were used for the analysis. We obtained this result by using observation data. This chart shows the behavior of heavy rainfall extremes from 1970 to 2019 in decadal base. Here we can see number of extreme rainfall event has increased in many places over last 2 decades. It shows the clear increase, especially in the dry zone. This chart shows the behavior of very heavy rainfall extremes from 1970 to 2019 in decadal base. Here too, we can see the number of extreme rainfall event has increased in many places. Especially in the dry zone, we can see clear increase. Generally, the results indicated a higher number of extreme events during the last 2 decades at many places in the 3 respective zones. Most of the stations at dry zone and intermediate zone indicated a clear increase in trend, but the trend is not significant in the wet zone. These are the output figures of future projections. These 2 figures show the decadal behavior of heavy and very heavy rainfall events at 3 climatic zones for RCP 4.5. Table highlighted the main figures of these 2 charts as regression equation, R-square value and p-values. Significant increase in trend can see the both charts. These charts show the decadal behaviors of heavy and very heavy rainfall events at 3 climatic zones for RCP 8.5. Here too, we can see the increase in trend of heavy and very heavy rainfall extreme events over 3 climatic zones, but not much significant of very heavy rainfall extreme events. In addition, we analyzed the seasonal behavior of heavy and very heavy rain events for 2 moderate scenarios of RCP 4.5 and RCP 8.5 for 3 climatic zones. These 3 tables highlighted the main figure of seasonal behavior of heavy and very heavy rain events for moderate scenario RCP 4.5 for 3 climatic zones. According to these table figures, all 4 monsoon seasons indicated the increase in trends at all zones. Especially the southwest and northeast monsoon, we can see significant increase in heavy and very heavy rainfall extreme events in all 3 climatic zones. These 3 tables shows the behavior of heavy and very heavy rain events for moderate scenario RCP 8.5 for 3 climatic zones. During all the other monsoon season, except first winter monsoon, indicated the increase in trends of heavy and very heavy rain events at all zones. Heavy and very heavy rain events are significantly increased during second winter monsoon at wet zone and southwest monsoon at the dry zone. This study gives us an idea that it is not possible to expect more extreme during the first winter monsoon in future projections. Wet and intermediate zone dominates with the evening thunderstorm during northeast monsoon, and similarly, dry zone dominates evening thunderstorm during southwest monsoon. This will be the reason for increase in heavy rainfall events in the dry zone during the southwest monsoon and wet zone in the northeast monsoon. Many scientists pointed out that severity of cyclone can be increased with the global warming. If so, dry zone during northeast monsoon will receive heavy rain with the formation of cyclones in the Bay of Bengal, as the possibility of developing cyclone in the Bay of Bengal is more favorable during November and December. Development of low pressure areas, depression and cyclones in the Bay of Bengal, it also a reason for increasing heavy rainfall in the wet zone during northeast monsoon. Similarly, global warming will support to develop more thunderstorm and severe depression and cyclones. With these conclusions, severe thunderstorm can be expected with the global warming in future. An author would like to thank Department of Meteorology and the NITS NASA for providing data to complete the study. In addition, Mr. Nihal Veerasinghe, who encouraged for written this paper. These are the references in this study. Finally, I would like to thank the organizing committee of the International Symposium on Multi-Hazard Early Warning and Disaster Risk Reduction for giving us this opportunity to present our research. And my special thanks to Dr. Nuwan Dias for keeping us informed of current events at the conference and constantly updating us with this program in the best possible coordination. Thank you everyone for your kind attention on my presentation.
Thank you for that presentation. Do we have any questions from our audience? Well, I'm just curious, is there a reason behind selecting those two RCPs and the models that you had used? It went by a bit fast in the video, so I wasn't able to take note of all the models, but had they been previously validated for your study area?
So I'll answer for that question. So actually we used the 6 models. Those are the models actually. So every model, they have different scenarios. I mean that 4.5 and 8.5, right? So we used both scenarios for the mentioned 6 models and used the median value for the all models. That is what actually we have done. We conducted our research to find the extreme values.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes, thank you, Mr. Sarath. Do you have any other questions? It seems that with the wet season, it's really a challenge for most climate modelers. Even here in Manila, the outputs from our climate change projections, it's very hard to test for statistical significance, right? for precipitation. Seems to be a common challenge everywhere.
Yeah, of course. So we also in Sri Lanka also that we get extreme rainfall, and you know that after that you have longer dry period. So that is what we can I then face for climate change.
Okay. So thank you very much. The others might still be thinking of questions for you, so maybe we'll come back to that at the end of the session. So with that, we move on to our last presentation for this afternoon. This is on assessing flood risk in the Malwatu Oya River Basin in northern Sri Lanka for establishing an effective early warning system. So Dr. Budika had to leave, but we have his colleagues, Mr. Vajira and Mr. Nandana, who can take your questions afterwards. So with that, we'll play the video.
Good afternoon. Title of the study is Assessing the Flood Risk in Malwathuwe River Basin in Northern Sri Lanka for Establishing Effective Early Warning System. The study team includes Nandana Mahakumurage, Buddhika Hapuarachi, Sunil Jayavira, and Vajra Hettike. When you take the context of flooding in Sri Lanka, it is the most common natural hazard of the country. Disinventor data since 1974 to 2020 shows that out of the nearly 31,000 disasters occurred, 28 accounts by floods. As the graph shows, trends of the floods affected people are increasing over time. Some of the causes of the floods can be identified as climate-induced rainfall vulnerability, population growth, and unplanned development activities. The post-disaster needs assessment conducted in 2016 and 17 reveals that the importance of having effective early warning system to reduce the flood risk. Therefore, lack of a disaster risk assessment has been identified as a major barrier for establishing effective early warning system for floods in Sri Lanka. The study area is 4 flood vulnerable DS divisions in Vaunia and Mana district in lower Malwathuwe River Basin. The Malwathuwe is one of the most flood vulnerable river basin in Sri Lanka. Started with national and district level consultations, and flood vulnerable areas identified based on the disinventor database. Building layer of the flood was prepared using OpenStreet mapping. To facilitate the household level data collection, GN level base maps prepared. A predetermined questionnaire was developed to collect household data sets, and the data was collected by GN officers in respective GN divisions. Flood inundation areas mapped using both participatory as well as GIS techniques. Using the data collected at household level, a database was prepared and it was linked to the map. Finally, validation meetings conducted, and flood risk of each household was assessed using the risk formula of the study. This is the theoretical model used for this study. As you know, effective disaster risk depends on hazardous events, conditions of exposure, and vulnerability and capacity. Different interconnections of those conditions are conceptualized by different scholars, but all these based are same theoretical argument and extension presented by Blackie et al. In 1994. Main steps in risk calculations are variable identification, data normalization, assessing weights to variables, and calculation of hazard exposure, vulnerability, and flood index. This slide shows the variables used for vulnerability assessment. Those include total number of members in the household, number of female members, number of children and children under 5 years and over 65 years, disabled members, number of dependents, poverty levels of the household, and household category, that is the permanent, semi-permanent, and improvised houses. Ranking method used to assign values and weights given based on the stakeholder consultation and expert judgment. Similarly, these are the variables used for household capacity assessment: annual income, family assets, drinking water sources that can be used at the disaster times, number of floors of the houses, ownership of the houses, and flood preparedness and availability of early warning systems. Results and discussion of the study. Result shows the results can be used to develop the targeted early warning system. Out of the total household vulnerable for floods, that is 7,790, only 22 houses are at very high risk level. Safe evacuation is required for 1,933 houses with high to moderate flood exposure. Special attention is required for 117 houses, those at high risk of flood, high to moderate risk of flood. Household information and contact numbers are needed for before, during, as well as after the emergency situation. Although the exposure levels are similar, overall risk levels are based on the specific vulnerabilities and capacities of household. Weights given can be adjusted based on the realistic estimates as well as expert judgment. All public buildings, road networks identified in each GN division can be used for disaster preparedness and response activities. Availability of household level database and household assets and housing types will facilitate damage and loss assessment. Final slide shows the vulnerability, capacity, and risk maps of the household in Kirisanthavekulam GND in Chettikulam DS division in Vavuniya district.
Hello. Yes, thank you for that video. I don't know if it was just my system, but there seemed to be parts where the sound was a bit soft. Was it just me? So in any case, forgive me if I ask a question that was in the video, as there were parts that I couldn't hear. Okay, but let's move to the questions in the chat box first. So we have a comment that this kind of study is useful for calibration and validation of flood model results. Is there a plan to utilize this risk assessment towards that end? Mr. Vajira, are you here? Oh, I see. Yes, a problem.
I can hear you now. Thank you very much for that comment, and very sorry for this. The sound does not come properly. Actually, what has happened? We have sent the better version of the presentation to the organizers. Unfortunately, it has not uploaded. No problem.
Oh.
And but really, yes, as Mr. Priyankara mentioned, that we are also developing this or conducting this risk assessment in Sawan district in Sri Lanka. Therefore, this the flood model going to apply by the Department of Irrigation for Mioy Basin. Of course, this flood risk assessment will continue in Mioy Basin as well. So therefore, there is an opportunity to use this data for flood warning with the development of flood model, as well as we are looking forward to have a mobile application. Thank you very much for presenting that one also in this session. I think there is an opportunity to tool all these tools and have a better early warning system for at least few basins in Sri Lanka.
That's a great idea. Maybe the mobile application, aside from giving information about floods, can also say something about flood risk, given the integration of exposure, vulnerability, and capacity. Do we have other questions on this presentation? Just to clarify, to come up with the flood risk, basically you're assigning scores, is that right? You have the flood hazard and a range of scores for high, low, same with the exposure and vulnerability factors that were in the video, then divided by the capacity factors to come up with a number. Is that right? And then you sort of
that's right.
classify the range of the numbers.
Yes, that's right. Mr. Nandana Mahakumarge also here with me, who was the leading GIS consultant for this study. Actually, we have done a detailed household level data collection and household level capacity, vulnerability and exposure analysis conducted using we have ranked their different levels of different levels of their variables. And finally, there is a potential for others also to realistically assign weights for different variables. So that's the kind of strength of this model. So if later, according to the situation, we can adjust the risk level or the parameters that will ended up with different risk levels. So we need to validate with the community as well as local stakeholders, so then we can get more realistic assessment.
And is that household data updated periodically? Because I imagine you would need some kind of census or a survey, household survey, to update that data periodically so you can give updated values for flood risk.
Yes, that's true. Now, what has happened now? There are government level GN officers. Every GN division, the village has an officer, so he has conducted this survey. So therefore, these are really authentic. And also, we have built their capacity to conduct this survey and orientation given. And also, at the end of the study, we have conducted training for them at the divisional level to apply some of these GIS methodology in their flood preparedness and response activities as well. So we hope local capacity building is part of this process, so that they can continue this and updated periodically, and that will be used. There's a potential to use in future.
Thank you. And I apologize, I should have mentioned earlier that Mr. Vajira is a technical specialist for the Climate Resilient Integrated Water Management Project of the Ministry of Irrigation and from UNDP. Okay, so we have a comment in the chat from Mr. Loy Rigo. Can we share the flood risk information in advance at the start of the flood season? Can we help sub-districts and communities be better prepared during the entire flood season?
Yes, of course. Now this the information already been shared with the stakeholders as well as communities, and what we have to do is we haven't go up to the preparedness and response level according to the vulnerability. We have to do more. Actually, we need some. We have identified some entry points for improving the preparedness and response, but we were not able to go up to that level in these two districts. But since our project is continuing for another 3.5 years, we hope to develop continue some of these actions and some of the resources according to the risk levels.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So that ends the 5 presentations for this afternoon. And I must say, I am very impressed at the type of collaborations that we see here. Looking at the institutions of our authors, we have representatives from the academe, from government, from humanitarian and aid agencies. So it's great that we have this kind of collaboration to produce really relevant and timely work. So at this point, I invite our co-chair, Ms. Urmila, to give a synthesis of the session.
Thank you, Professor. In the interest of time, I will only share the crux of the 5 presentations. Having been a humanitarian worker for over 14 years, I really appreciated the 5 presentations that you've shared here. we've battled with the impact of drought, floods, and landslides. We've seen death, displacement, risen as a result of natural hazards. And we're really happy to see your presentations where you have shared your ideas on how you can combat the impact of natural hazards. Starting with the first one, the real-time flood forecasting, I think this was an excellent idea that you shared via your presentation on basically on forecasting flood model, which you also try to incorporate with reservoir management and to have control over heavy rainfall that the area receives. And then also, I see that flood study model is also required to ensure that the flood situation is managed well. So in a nutshell, what we see in this system is that it addresses the issues of both drought by conserving the water, and also to some extent, it addresses the issue of flooding as well. Right, so this is what we see in this model. How practical this is and how realistic this is probably something that you have to test and try in some of these locations and see how well it works. But I think if this is successful, we have a huge success to see in the country, addressing a number of issues, reducing the investment on relief and early recovery, and focusing more on long-term intervention. So this is what I see. Thank you very much. And secondly, the rainfall triggered landslides and early warning system. We saw that our host actually shared some of the models, identified the gaps in the existing system, and also spoke about the water flow in a cascading order and so on. So I think this system basically addresses and improves the mechanism of evacuation and early warning in areas that are vulnerable for landslides. So this is something that we actually I gathered from the presentation. The development of flood warning application, this is something that the country definitely requires, and the usage of mobile phones. I'm not sure how many people in remote areas have the Android phones, have access to internet or GPS. But if this is something that is practical, something that people can have in remote areas, I think this would be an ideal mechanism. Something that I would say that World Vision Lanka was looking to do this sometime in the future. So I'm really very happy to see this being presented here. One concern I had was access to internet. I'm not sure how many people who live remotely will have access to internet. So that is probably a challenge, or probably something that you can really test and see, go into remote areas and see how well this system is working. If it does work, I think it would be a great achievement for you and for the country. So an excellent idea to address the critical issues that we have right now in the country. The research on extensive rainfall from 1970 to 2019, I think this is a great study done, very in-depth knowledge shared on rainfall. I think a lot of effort has gone into this. It also helps, this research basically helps in looking at the impact of climate change and precipitation. Again, these are very critical issues for the country, and not just the country. I think if you look at the entire Asia Pacific region, this is a very critical area. So you going into this research, it will definitely help the country, and it will improve a lot of things that we are currently seeing as issues today. I'm also happy to see that 6 models were introduced and used in your research, basically. Thank you so much for that presentation. Assessing flood risk in Malwatu Oya by the Irrigation Department and UNDP. Thank you very much. This is an excellent study done. And I would say that the areas that get affected in and around the Malwa to Oya basin, and then also the other areas linked to these areas is massive. And we see this almost year after year. So a study such as this and coming up with this system would really benefit the country. We also have seen that improving the cascading system, I'm not sure how relevant it is here, but I think the household database development, the GIS technologies, all that put together through participatory mapping tools, all these combined together probably will actually bring a solution, or at least reduce the impact of the current flooding and heavy rainfall received in certain locations in and around the Malwa to Oya basin would definitely benefit from this. The villages, the farming communities around these areas will definitely benefit from this. So this is very useful also for validation of flood model results, what you have actually done and contributed. So thank you so much. This is only the crux of your presentation. When I write the details, I think it would be shared with you eventually. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Urmila. And I think we are on the dot to end this presentation. Thank you again to our presenters and researchers. And I'd also like to recognize our technical support, Budi and Randula, because without them, we wouldn't be able to see your presentations. And thank you also to the organizers of this conference. Represented in this room, we have Professor Delanti, Georgina, and Nuwan was here a while ago. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And thank you to my co-chair, Urmila, for that synthesis and for her insights. So are there any last words, burning comments, things that anyone really wants to say? Now is your last chance. Okay, so with that, I hope to perhaps see you next year for the next conference, then to hear updates on all of this great work. So good evening, everyone, and thank you again for your participation.
Thank you so much, Professor, and thank you all those who are on the call. Thank you very much.